I never thought heartbreak could be so loud. It wasn't a scream, or a door slamming, or glass shattering against the floor. It was silence. A silence so sharp it carved into my chest the night I watched Evan kiss someone else under the Christmas lights of downtown Chicago. And yet, weeks later, here I was in New York City, trapped between strangers counting down to midnight, standing next to him like the world hadn't already ended once. Funny, isn't it? The universe has a sick sense of humor, throwing you back into the orbit of the one person you swore you'd never need again. Evan didn't look at me at first. He was too busy pretending the fireworks hadn't started in the pit of his chest. The same place mine had begun to burn again the moment his shoulder brushed against mine. His scarf smelled like cedar and smoke, the scent I'd promised myself I'd forget. But when the countdown echoed through Times Square, 10, 9, 8, I realized forgetting him was as impossible as holding back the tide. That night, I had no idea the way his hand would find mine. I had no idea that by dawn, my heart would betray me and whisper the one word I thought I'd buried forever. Yes. New Year's Eve in New York was supposed to be my escape. I came here to outrun memories, not to find them waiting at every corner like unpaid debts. The streets glittered with holiday lights, and confetti already clung to the damp sidewalks. Tourists clutched paper cups of hot chocolate, their laughter mingling with the music spilling from bars. I'd been drinking since sundown, trying to drown the ache that Evan had left in me. But liquor only made his ghost sharper. And then off Corset appeared. He wasn't supposed to be here. Not in this city. Not in this crowd. Not in my life anymore. But there he was, leaning against the metal barricade like the night was built around him. Like the world had paused to make space for his smile. That smile. The same one that had undone me 1,000 times before. I should have turned away. I should have disappeared into the crowd. Let him stay a stranger again. But I didn't. My feet betrayed me. My heart betrayed me. Evan. His name came out rough, a scrape against my throat. He looked up, startled, and for the briefest moment, his face broke open with something raw: shock, hope, maybe even guilt. Then he masked it, quick and practiced, the way he always did when feelings threatened to make him vulnerable. "Daniel," he said, like he'd been rehearsing it. And just like that, the silence between us wasn't empty anymore. It was alive, heavy, breathing. People shoved past us, bodies pressing close as the crowd surged toward midnight. The city was electric, buzzing with the promise of new beginnings. But all I could see was the past standing inches from me. "Didn't think I'd see you here," Evan muttered, his voice almost lost beneath the roar of the crowd. "Didn't plan on it." I forced a laugh, bitter at the edges. Guess fate's got a twisted sense of humor. He smirked, that same infuriating, devastating smirk. Or maybe it knows something we don't. The words hung between us, and I hated that part of me wanted to believe him. By the time the countdown began, we'd somehow drifted closer, the space between us collapsing like it always did. I could feel the warmth radiating from his body, could hear the catch in his breath when our shoulders brushed. Fireworks exploded above us, painting the sky in gold and crimson, but all I saw was him. And when his fingers grazed mine, tentative, searching, I should have pulled away. I should have remembered the way he broke me. Instead, I let him hold on. That single touch was enough to shatter the walls I had built. It was enough to remind me of everything we'd been, and everything I still wanted us to be. "Happy New Year, Daniel," he whispered, his voice trembling. And against every promise I'd made to myself, I whispered back, "Happy New Year, Evan." That night wasn't about fireworks or resolutions. It wasn't even about forgiveness. It was about two hearts that refused to stop orbiting each other, no matter how many times they collided and broke apart. And as the confetti rained down and strangers kissed around us, I realized this wasn't an ending. It was a beginning, messy, fragile, terrifying, but a beginning nonetheless. I didn't know then how much pain still waited for us. I didn't know the secrets Evan carried, or how close I'd come to walking away for good. All I knew was that, for the first time in a long time, I wanted to stay. The fireworks ended, but the silence after felt louder than the sky exploding. All around us, people were shouting, hugging, kissing strangers like the whole city had turned into one giant heartbeat. And yet, I felt frozen. His hand was still in mine. Warm. Familiar. Dangerous. I didn't pull away. Neither did he. Instead, Evan looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. Not the boy he used to love. Not the man he broke. But something new. Something fragile. And it scared me, because I wasn't ready to believe him. Not yet. You shouldn't be here, I finally said, my voice steadier than I felt. Neither should you, he countered, his thumb brushing against my skin like he couldn't help himself. But maybe we're exactly where we're supposed to be. That was the kind of thing Evan always said, words that sounded beautiful but came with no promises. And still, I wanted to believe them. God, I wanted to. We ended up at a diner. The kind that smelled like burnt coffee and syrup, its neon sign buzzing against the night. We slid into a booth across from each other, steam rising from two mugs we barely touched. The city outside was still alive, but in here it felt suspended, like time was holding its breath. So, I said, staring at the chipped formica table instead of his eyes. Chicago wasn't enough for you. You had to follow me to New York. He laughed, low and tired. I didn't know you'd be here. I came for, I don't know, a fresh start. Maybe. I scoffed. You and your fresh starts. His smile faltered. You think I don't know what I did, Daniel? You think I don't wake up every day wishing I could take it back? The words hit me harder than I wanted them to. Because the truth was I had thought exactly that. I had convinced myself he didn't care. That the kiss I saw was proof I was nothing to him. But hearing the crack in his voice now made me doubt everything. Why him? I asked quietly. My hands tightened around the mug even though it was cold now. Out of everyone, why him? Evan swallowed hard, his eyes shining under the harsh fluorescent lights. Because I was stupid. Because I thought I could numb myself. Because I didn't know how to face how much I loved you without ruining it. My chest tightened. I wanted to hate him. I wanted to cling to the anger that had kept me standing all these months. But sitting across from him now, with his voice breaking and his hands trembling, I realized the truth. He wasn't some villain who set out to hurt me. He was just a boy who was scared of his own heart. We talked until the sun began to rise, painting the diner windows with streaks of pink and gold. The city was quieter now, softer, like it was finally exhaling. At some point, Evan's hand reached across the table again. Not demanding, not assuming, just waiting. And for the first time in months, I didn't think about what I was supposed to do. I thought about what I wanted. I wanted him, so I let my hand slip into his. The next weeks were messy. We tried to rebuild something that felt impossible to glue back together. There were nights we fought screaming in the cold air of Brooklyn streets, voices echoing off brick walls. There were nights I left his apartment before dawn, swearing I wouldn't come back. And yet, I always did. Because no matter how much we broke, something stronger pulled us back. Evan was different now. Or maybe he was just rawer, less willing to hide behind charm. He admitted things he never had before: his fear of commitment, his struggle with his own identity, how he pushed me away because he thought I deserved someone braver. "I thought if I hurt you first," he whispered one night, his face buried in my shoulder, "then maybe it wouldn't hurt so much when you realized you deserved better." I should have told him he was right, that I did deserve better. But the truth was, my heart didn't want better. It wanted him. One night, during a snowstorm, the city felt like it belonged only to us. We walked through Central Park, the world muffled under a thick blanket of white. He pulled me into a quiet spot by the frozen lake, his breath clouding in the air. "Do you remember the first time you kissed me?" he asked. How could I forget? I smiled despite myself. "You panicked halfway through and spilled Coke all over my shirt." He laughed, the sound warm even in the biting cold. "I've been panicking ever since." And then, without warning, his lips were on mine. Not tentative this time. Not searching. Certain. Fierce. Like he was finally ready to stop running. The snow fell heavier, dusting our hair and coats. But I didn't feel the cold anymore. For the first time, I felt safe in the storm. Of course, life wasn't a straight line back to happiness. There were still questions. Could I trust him again? Could I forgive him without losing myself? Could love survive not just betrayal, but the fear of it happening again? I wrestled with those questions every day. And every day, the answer came back the same. Love isn't about avoiding pain. It's about choosing who's worth suffering for. And Evan, God help Mayhay, was worth it. The night everything changed again. We were back in Times Square. Not for the crowd. Not for the fireworks. But just because it had become ours. The place where the new version of us began. He held my hand like he never wanted to let go. His eyes searched mine. Nervous but steady. "Daniel," he said softly, "I don't want another fresh start. I don't want another chance to mess this up. I just want you. For as long as you'll have me." My throat tightened. For a moment, all I could hear was the echo of that New Year's countdown. The night everything had felt like fate and fire. And then, before I could second-guess myself, I whispered the only word that mattered. "Yes." His arms wrapped around me, his lips finding mine, and the world blurred into nothing. There were no fireworks this time, no crowd cheering, no confetti raining from the sky. Just us. Two boys who had broken each other, healed each other, and finally, chosen each other. And in that quiet, ordinary night, I realized something extraordinary. Sometimes love doesn't need the noise of fireworks. Sometimes all it needs is the courage to say yes again and again. Until forever. Saying yes should have felt like relief. A release. The moment when all the cracks in my chest sealed themselves shut and everything made sense again. But the truth, it was terrifying. Because yes didn't mean forgetting. Yes didn't erase the nights I cried alone. The doubts that haunted me. The memory of him kissing someone else under 1,000 Christmas lights. Yes meant I was choosing to step back into the fire, knowing I could get burned all over again. But when Evan kissed me that night, his hands trembling against my jaw, his whole body pressed against mine like I was the anchor holding him together, I realized something I hadn't before. Love isn't safe. It never was. The weeks that followed were full of contradictions. Some mornings felt like magic, like waking up tangled in his sheets with sunlight spilling across his shoulders. I'd watch the rise and fall of his chest and think, this is what forever should look like. Other mornings were war. I catch myself replaying old memories, wondering if he'd ever lied to me about other things. Sometimes a careless word or a text on his phone could send me spiraling. I hated how little it took to unearth the ache I thought I'd buried. And Evan knew it. He could see the doubt written across my face. "I don't blame you," he said once, his hand finding mine in the dark. "For questioning me. For hating me sometimes. But I need you to know I am not going anywhere this time. You're it, Daniel. You've always been it." I wanted to believe him. God, I did. But trust doesn't rebuild overnight. It's carved slowly. One small promise kept at a time. One night, we went to a small queer bar in the East Village. The air was thick with laughter and music, rainbow lights spilling across the walls. For the first time, Evan didn't flinch when he reached for my hand in public. He laced our fingers together and pulled me onto the dance floor. "I don't care who's watching," he whispered against my ear, his breath warm. We moved clumsily to the music, our bodies close, his forehead pressed to mine. For years, he had been afraid of what people would say, afraid of being seen, afraid of claiming me out loud. And now, here he was, holding me in front of everyone like it was the most natural thing in the world. I felt tears sting my eyes, and for once, they weren't from pain. Still, not every night ended with dancing. One evening, after a long shift at work, I found him waiting outside my apartment. He looked pale, shaken. "What's wrong?" I asked immediately. He handed me his phone. There, glowing on the screen, was a message from the man I'd seen him kiss all those months ago. "Still thinking about you. Call me." The sight made bile rise in my throat. My chest burned. "Why is he texting you?" I demanded, anger sharpening my voice. "I don't know," Evan said quickly. "I swear I haven't spoken to him since that night. I blocked him, but somehow he found another number. Daniel, you have to believe me." But belief wasn't simple. Not with that wound still so fresh. "You expect me to just take your word for it?" I snapped. His face crumpled. "No. I expect to earn it. But please don't walk away from me because of a ghost." I turned from him, my hands shaking. My instinct screamed to run, to protect myself, to avoid the risk of being shattered all over again. But when I looked back, when I saw the desperation in his eyes, something in me softened. For the first time, I realized he wasn't just asking me to trust him, was terrified of losing me too. We survived that night. Barely. But we survived. It became a turning point. I saw how far he was willing to go to prove himself. How much he wanted to fight for us. He showed up every day, not with grand gestures, but with consistency. Checking in. Listening. Staying. And slowly, piece by piece, I began to trust again. One snowy afternoon, months later, we drove upstate to a cabin his aunt owned near the Hudson River. It was quiet there, the kind of silence that settles into your bones. We built a fire, cooked pasta that tasted half-burned, and laughed like kids. That night, wrapped in blankets, he looked at me with a seriousness I hadn't seen in a long time. "I used to think love was about fireworks," he said softly. "The kind that burn bright and fast and leave nothing but ashes. But with you, it's different. The slower. The scarier. But it's real." I swallowed, my throat tight. "You broke me once, Evan. You know that, right?" He nodded. "I know. And I'll spend the rest of my life making sure I never do again." His words weren't dramatic. They weren't poetic. But they were steady. Honest. And that was worth more than any fireworks. The biggest test came in spring. Evan got offered a job in Los Angeles, something he had dreamed about for years. A chance to work on a film set. To finally step into the career he'd always wanted. But it meant leaving New York. Leaving me. When he told me, I felt the old panic rise. Distance had ruined us once before. The thought of starting over long distance felt unbearable. You should take it, I said, forcing the words out even as my heart cracked. You can't throw this away for me. His jaw tightened. Do you think I'd leave you behind again? Daniel, I want the job, but not without you. You're asking me to move across the country. I'm asking you to be with me, wherever that is. The silence stretched. The weight of the choice pressed on me. Leaving New York meant leaving everything I had built since him. But staying meant risking losing him all over again. And yet, deep down, I knew the truth. My life wasn't about a place. It was about a person. It was about him. The decision wasn't easy. But in the end, I packed my bags. We drove across the country together, through small towns and endless highways, learning each other in ways we never had before. There were fights in motel parking lots, laughter in diners, kisses in rest stops under star-filled skies. By the time we reached California, something had shifted. We weren't two broken boys trying to patch up old wounds anymore. We were partners, choosing each other, every mile, every moment. And on a quiet night in Los Angeles, under a sky without fireworks, he pulled me close and whispered, "Forever, okay?" I smiled, my heart steady for the first time in years. Forever. And this time, my yes wasn't whispered out of fear or desperation. It was steady. It was certain. It was real. Because sometimes, the most unexpected moment of your life isn't when someone breaks your heart. It's when you realize it's strong enough to heal and to say yes again. Los Angeles was nothing like New York. New York had swallowed us whole, wrapped us in its chaos, forced us to confront each other in the glow of neon lights and the crush of endless crowds. LA. Thuffet stretched out, wide and shimmering, like it had nothing to prove. Palm trees swayed lazily against cloudless skies, and nights were quiet in a way that unnerved me at first. Evan loved it immediately. He was like a kid set free, his eyes brighter every time he stepped onto a film set. The long hours didn't bother him, thrived under the pressure. Came home buzzing with stories about directors, cameras, and the small roles he'd been given. But for me, the silence crept in. I'd left everything behind, my job, my friends, the city that had shaped me after our first collapse. In LA, I was starting over, and some days I didn't know who I was without the life I'd built in New York. And yet every night, when Evan came through the door, exhausted but glowing, and pressed a kiss against my forehead, I remembered why I'd chosen this. Why I'd chosen him. Still, love doesn't erase loneliness. The first rail crack appeared one evening after he came home late. "Sorry," he said, tossing his jacket onto the couch. "We had to reshoot a scene. It went longer than expected." I nodded, trying to hide the knot in my chest. "You could have texted." He froze, guilt flashing in his eyes. "You're right. I should have. Things were crazy, and I lost track." It was a small thing, but it wasn't really about the text. It was about the gnawing fear that history might repeat itself, that one day I'd look up and realize he'd slipped back into old habits of secrets and silence. He saw it in my face. He always did. "Daniel," he said quietly, "I'm not him anymore. I'm not that guy who let you wonder where I was. Please believe me." I wanted to, but belief is fragile. It bends under the weight of old scars. Weeks turned into months. Slowly, LA began to feel less like exile and more like possibility. I picked up freelance work, met new people, and found my footing again. And through it all, Evan kept proving himself. He showed up. He told me everything, sometimes too much, rambling about work until midnight. He left notes for me on the kitchen counter when he had early calls. He made me laugh when the city felt too strange, too empty. But the biggest test came not from him but from me. It happened at a party one of his coworkers hosted in the Hollywood Hills. The place was all glass walls and infinity pools, the kind of house that looked stolen from a magazine. I felt out of place, clutching a drink I didn't want, surrounded by people who spoke a language of ambition I couldn't translate. Then someone caught my eye. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a grin too charming for his own good. He asked me where I was from, what I did, how I liked LA. His laugh was easy, and for a moment, the attention felt good. Dangerous, but good. And in that moment, I understood how Evan had stumbled all those months ago. Not because he didn't love me, but because sometimes loneliness doesn't look like loneliness. Sometimes it looks like temptation disguised as comfort. When Evan came over, sliding an arm around my waist, grounding me, the stranger melted into the background. I realized then that love isn't about never being tempted. It's about choosing again and again who you want to come home to. I chose him. But life has a way of testing you even when you've made your choice. One night, Evan came home shaken. What happened? I asked, setting down the book I hadn't really been reading. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing. The guy from Chicago. He's here. On set. The name hit me like ice water. The ghost I thought we'd buried had followed us across the country. Evan's voice was tight. He tried to talk to me. I walked away. But he's not going to stop. Daniel. I know him. He's going to try to make this a problem. Fear and anger surged in me. Not at Evan but at fate. At the universe. At the cruel way the past refuses to stay buried. What do we do? I asked. He stopped pacing. Looked me straight in the eye. We fight. Together. I'm not losing you to him again. And for the first time, I saw the steel in him, not just love, not just regret, but determination. The following weeks were hell. The man lingered on the edges of Evan's work, needling, whispering, making himself visible. He even found ways to brush close to me at industry events, as if he wanted to remind me of what I'd seen that night in Chicago. Old fears clawed at me, threatening to unravel everything we'd built. But Evan never wavered. He shut him down publicly, pulled me close in private, and reminded me every day that I was the only one he saw. Let him haunt himself, Evan said one night, his voice fierce. He's not ours to carry anymore. And somehow, hearing him say ours like the burden wasn't mine alone lifted something from me. By summer, the ghost faded. He moved on. Or maybe he just realized he couldn't wedge himself between us anymore. And when the dust settled, what remained was something stronger than before. One evening, Evan took me to the beach. The sky was painted in oranges and purples, the waves whispering against the shore. We walked barefoot, our hands brushing, the sand cool beneath our feet. Do you ever regret it? I asked suddenly. Regret what? He said. Us. Everything we went through. All the pain. He stopped walking, turning to face me. No. Because it led me here. To this moment. To you. And if I had to go through all of it again just to earn this, he squeezed my hand. I would. The ocean roared, swallowing the silence that followed. And in that moment, I knew he wasn't just the boy I'd loved. He was the man I wanted to love for the rest of my life. That fall, we found an apartment together. It wasn't Mucha's small place in Silver Lake with creaky floors and a view of a parking lot, but it was ours. We painted the walls ourselves, arguing about colors, laughing when we spilled more paint on each other than on the walls. Every corner of that apartment became a memory. Cooking disasters in the tiny kitchen. Long talks on the balcony at midnight. Making love on the floor before we even had furniture. It wasn't perfect. We still fought. We still carried scars. But the difference was we always came back. And then came New Year's Eve. A year since that night in Times Square. A year since fate threw us together under fireworks and forced me to face the truth I'd been running from. We didn't go out. No crowds. No countdowns. No neon lights. Just us. In our apartment. A bottle of champagne half empty on the counter. As midnight approached, Evan pulled me close, his forehead against mine. "Do you remember what you said last year?" He whispered. I smiled. "Yes." He kissed me softly, lingering. "Say it again." And I did, with more certainty than I'd ever felt in my life. Yes. Because love isn't just one moment, one kiss, one night under fireworks. It's every choice that follows. Every fight survived. Every morning you wake up and decide again and again that this person is worth it. And for me, Evan always would be. The second New Year's passed quietly, but it left me restless. Something about it sitting in our tiny Silver Lake apartment with empty champagne glasses and his head on my shoulder made me realize we had come full circle. We'd survived betrayal, distance, temptation, and ghosts from the past. We had carved a life out of chaos. But part of me wondered what came next. Love, I had learned, doesn't stay still. It either grows, or it withers. And if I was honest with myself, I wanted it to grow. I wanted permanence. I wanted a promise that reached further than tomorrow. I didn't tell Evan that, though. Not yet. In spring, his career started to take off. He landed a recurring role on a streaming series, nothing flashy, but enough to change our day-to-day. Suddenly, people recognized him at coffee shops. Casting directors called more often. His face popped up on posters in the city. And with success came new tension. I saw the way people looked at him at events, men and women both hungry, eager, hoping to be the one he noticed. He brushed it off, always coming back to me, always grounding us with a kiss or a hand on my back. But the old insecurities lingered like shadows. One night, at a rap party, I watched a co-star lean too close, laugh too loudly at his jokes, place a hand on his arm like she owned the right. My stomach nodded. Later, in the car, couldn't hold it in. "You didn't even notice, did you?" "Notice what?" he asked, confused. "How she was all over you." He blinked, then shook his head. "Daniel, I swear, I wasn't paying attention. You're the only one I see." But the bitterness slipped out anyway. Funny. That's not what it looked like from where I was standing. Silence filled the car. Heavy. Suffocating. When we got home, I stormed into the bedroom, hating myself for sounding jealous but too raw to stop. Minutes later, he followed. "Look at me." I couldn't. "Daniel," he said firmly. I finally turned, and his eyes were fierce, unyielding. "I've made mistakes, but I will not spend the rest of our lives on trial for them. You can't keep waiting for me to fail. If you don't trust me by now, then what are we even doing?" The words cut deep, but he wasn't wrong. I swallowed hard. "I do trust you. I'm scared." His expression softened instantly. He crossed the room, cupping my face. "Then let me keep proving you don't need to be." And in that moment, I realized something vital. Trust isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing to stay, even when fear whispers otherwise. The summer was kinder. We fell into a rhythm that felt almost domestic. Grocery shopping on Sundays. Movie nights with takeout. Arguments about laundry that ended in kisses against the washing machine. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. And it was enough. Then, in July, I got sick. Nothing dramatic at first, a fever. Exhaustion, but it dragged on longer than it should have. Doctors ran tests, and for weeks we lived in limbo, waiting for answers. Evan never left my side. He made soup I barely touched, stayed up all night when I couldn't sleep, held me when panic threatened to swallow me whole. "I don't care what it is," he whispered one night, his arms wrapped tight around me. "As long as I get to keep you." It turned out to be nothing life-threatening, just a stubborn infection that finally relented with the right medication. But the scare left us both shaken. It also left me certain of one thing: I didn't want to waste another second doubting what we were. So I started planning. Not a grand proposal. Not fireworks or flash mobs or some scripted scene. Just something real. I chose the rooftop of our apartment building. It wasn't glamorous cracked concrete, a rusted railing, the hum of the city below. But it was where we had watched sunsets, shared secrets, and leaned on each other when the world felt too heavy. It was home. I waited until autumn, when the air was crisp and the city lights felt sharper against the dark sky. I set up string lights I borrowed from a friend, spread out blankets, lit candles that flickered nervously in the breeze. When Evan came home from set, tired and distracted, I led him upstairs without explanation. He froze when he saw it. "Daniel," his voice broke. I took his hands, my heart hammering. "I've spent so much time being afraid, Evan. Afraid of losing you, afraid of trusting you, afraid of what it means to say forever. But tonight, I realized something. Fear doesn't get to decide for me anymore. Love does." His eyes shimmered in the glow of the candles. I sank to one knee, my voice shaking. "You asked me once if I'd say yes again. And I will. Every day. For the rest of my life. So, Evan, will you marry me?" The silence stretched, thick with emotion. And then he dropped to his knees too, pulling me into his arms, laughter and tears mingling in his voice. "Yes. God. Yes." We kissed, clumsy and desperate, candles flickering wildly around us. The city roared below, oblivious. And for the first time, I didn't just whisper yes into the night. I shouted it with every piece of me. The weeks after were a blur. Calls to family. Messages from friends. Plans we didn't have the money or patience to finalize. But none of that mattered. What mattered was the quiet moments, the way he looked at me when I wore the simple silver band we bought together. The way he called me fiancé, like it was the sweetest word he'd ever learned. We still argued. We still tripped over old scars. But now, every fight ended with the same reminder: we had chosen forever. And forever meant we kept choosing, even when it was hard. On New Year's Eve, exactly 2 years after that first unexpected moment, we stood on the same rooftop where I'd proposed. No fireworks, no countdown, no confetti. Just us, wrapped in blankets, watching the city breathe. When midnight struck, Evan turned to me, his voice low. "Do you ever think about that night in Times Square? About how close we were to missing this?" "All the time," I admitted. "If I'd walked away, if you hadn't reached for me." He smiled, brushing his lips against mine. "Then fate would have found another way. Because some things don't break, no matter how hard you try to shatter them." And I believed him. Because love had broken us, healed us, tested us, and carried us through. And in the end, it had brought us here to a forever I never thought I'd find. So when he whispered, "One more yes," into the quiet of the new year, I didn't hesitate. Yes, I breathed. Always. Forever. The months leading up to the wedding felt surreal. We were not the kind of couple who dreamed of flower arrangements or banquet halls. Neither of us had Pinterest boards filled with someday visions. What we had was simpler, rawer. We had the memory of broken trust, the fire of reconciliation, and the fragile, powerful certainty that we wanted to choose each other every day. And so, when we planned the wedding, we stripped it down to what mattered. No grand guest list. No cathedral. Just us. A handful of friends and family. And a little vineyard outside Los Angeles that looked like it belonged in a postcard. My mom cried when I told her. Not because she was sad, but because, in her words, I thought you'd given up on happy endings. I hadn't admitted it before, but maybe I had. There were nights, in the gap between Chicago and New York, when I believed love wasn't built for me. That maybe some hearts weren't meant to be paired. That maybe I was destined to keep saying goodbye. But Evan changed that. Or maybe, he just reminded me that love isn't about finding perfection, it's about building something flawed and real and worth fighting for. On the morning of the wedding, I woke early. The sky was soft with dawn. The vineyard quiet except for the hum of birds. I stood at the window of the small cottage we'd rented, looking out over rows of vines still heavy with dew. My chest ached with anticipation. Fear. Yes, but not the old kind. Not fear of betrayal or loss. This was the fear that comes before a leap. The kind that says, what if happiness is real, and I'm about to step into it? When I saw Evan for the first time that day, my breath caught. He wore a simple suit. Nothing flashy. But it didn't matter. What mattered was the way his eyes found mine instantly. Like the rest of the world was irrelevant. He smiled a nervous, trembling smile, and I knew he was thinking the same thing I was. How did we get here? How did we survive enough storms to arrive at forever? The ceremony itself was small, intimate. Our families sat close, our closest friends flanking them. The officiant spoke briefly, but the words blurred in my head. All I could focus on was Evan's hand in mine, his thumb brushing gently over my skin, grounding me. When it came time to share vows, he went first. Daniel, he began, his voice unsteady. You were the first person who made me believe I could be seen, really seen, and still be loved. And even when I failed you, even when I broke the very thing I swore I'd protect, you gave me the chance to come back. I don't deserve you. I don't deserve the way you've chosen me. Again and again. But I promise, for the rest of my life, I'll spend every day trying to earn that yes you gave me. Because you're my home. You always will be. By the time he finished, my face was wet with tears. I didn't even try to hide them. When it was my turn, I took a shaky breath. Evan, you taught me that love isn't safe. That it isn't easy. That it's messy and terrifying, and sometimes it hurts more than it heals. But you also taught me that it's worth it. Every fight. Every scar. Every risk. Because in the end, love is about choice. And I will keep choosing you on our best days. On our worst days. On days when we don't know how to keep going. I'll choose you until the end of everything. Because there's no one else I want to say yes to. The officiant barely got through pronouncing us before Evan pulled me close and kissed me. Our tears mingling. Our hands clutching desperately as though the world might steal us away if we let go. But it couldn't. Not anymore. The reception was laughter and dancing. But what I remember most are the small moments. My mom hugging him like a son. His sister squeezing my hand and whispering, "Thank you for not giving up on him." Our friends clinking glasses, faces bright with joy. And later, when the sun had set and the vineyard glowed with fairy lights, we stole away from the noise. Just the two of us, standing in the quiet of the vines, the air cool and sweet. This feels like a dream, Evan murmured. I smiled. Then don't wake me. He kissed me again, slow and certain, and I realized something I hadn't before. This wasn't the end of our story. This was the prologue to the longest chapter yet. We left the vineyard that night not as broken boys, not as a couple defined by scars, but as partners, as husbands. Life didn't suddenly become perfect. Bills still came. Arguments still happened. Work still pulled us in different directions. But now, those things felt smaller, easier to face, because we weren't carrying them alone. The years that followed were filled with unexpected joys. We adopted a Doga scrappy rescue mutt that chewed through half our furniture but slept curled between us every night. We traveled when we could, building memories in places we'd only dreamed of. And every New Year's Eve, no matter where we were, we paused at midnight, looked into each other's eyes, and repeated the word that had changed everything. Yes. Sometimes whispered, sometimes shouted, always certain. One night, much later, sitting on our porch in Los Angeles with gray just starting to streak his hair, Evan asked, "Do you ever think about the first yes?" "All the time," I said, leaning my head against his shoulder. "You were so close to walking away." "I know," I admitted softly, "but something told me not to." He smiled, pressing a kiss to my temple. "Thank God for that." We sat in silence then, the kind of silence that no longer hurt, but healed, the kind that comes only after years of surviving together. And as the stars stretched overhead, I thought about the boy I was that night in Times Square, the boy who thought yes was a mistake, who thought love had already destroyed him. He couldn't have imagined this. He couldn't have seen how many times yes would save him. So here's the truth. The unexpected moment on New Year's Eve didn't just make me whisper yes to him forever. It made me realize forever isn't a single promise, it's 1,000 small ones. 1,000 choices. 1,000 yes spoken in the quiet, in the storms, in the mundane mornings and the unforgettable nights. And I will keep saying it. Every day. Every year. Always. Yes. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.